Welcome to the Claims Underground podcast with your hosts, Corey Locke and Troy Willis, where we help policyholders just like you understand your policy and how to navigate through an insurance claim. We advocate for homeowners as well as businesses when insurance companies won't pay. So if you're tired of getting the runaround and ready to find out what's really going on, then let's get down to business and learn from the insurance claims experts, Corey Locke and Troy Willis.
Good afternoon, good evening. This is Troy Willis from the Claims Underground. We are back here today talking about pitfalls of insurance estimates. Let me introduce myself by starting out letting you know a little bit about myself. I am a licensed public adjuster, expert witness, certified umpire and appraiser, certified mitigator, and I've been in the insurance industry for over 30 years. And my co-host, Corey Locke, will tell you a little bit about himself.
Hey there. I'm Corey Locke. I'm a 35-year adjuster, and in that time, I have been an independent adjuster, licensed also in the state of California. I'm also licensed now as a public adjuster, but for 35 years, I have been an adjuster, multi-line, but for the last 30 years, I have been a property estimating adjuster, contents, structure, all of that. So I'm a public adjuster now. I'm also an expert witness. I'm also IICRC triple mastered and ACAC smoke and fire consultant. So we're here today to give you the inside view of what we understand to be pitfalls of insurance estimating and insurance estimates. So Troy, I know that you've been a contractor for a good number of years and now you're retired, but you were actually estimating on behalf of insurance companies way back when you were working as a contractor. Were you ever told as a contractor estimating for those adjusters ever to leave things out and not fully indemnify the insured? Did that actually occur when you were doing your job as a contractor?
It did to some extent. I mean, there was to the extent that they would always allege that it wasn't covered. And of course, we didn't have access to the policies to advocate differently. Even as a contractor, we couldn't.
Right.
And so again, you went off of as we always say, it's come from management. It's not in the policy. It's just what they would tell you that, it's not covered. So this would reduce the cost down. And you many times as the contractor directly, you'd have to make it work to, some things you had to do as far as cut costs with cost material, or, you'd have to manage your time to really make money in it. Whereas, you got these different things like if you hired a painter to come in, for example, and he charged you, $15,000 to paint a house, or you brought in your painting crew that's on your payroll, and they knock it out in a few days, so it costs you a lot less than that. So you learn to manage work where you can actually return the people back to pre-loss condition. Matter of fact, we used to do a lot of custom work, and we used to put people back way better than what they were. But, at least you would put back the pre-loss condition. When I served as an independent adjuster writing claims for the insurance company, it's one of the reasons I became a public adjuster is because I was directed to lowball an estimate that was 7 times what the damages were, and I disagreed with it. And that became a conflict with me and the owner at the company. And, again, I had to let him know, you put your name on it. I'm not putting my name on this. And after that, it ended up going over to a public adjuster who in return brought home that settlement for about 7 times the amount of what that lady was entitled. So, those are the things that we see all the time. And being a public adjuster and advocating for homeowners and looking at these policies as we do, we understand that there's a lot of misconception in what people believe that the insurance company is going to do for them. They're going to sit out this guy to help me. He's going to come out here and write this claim. And, you don't know if this person has, most insurance adjusters don't even have construction experience. And they're arguing with contractors that, we don't owe this, but you never built a house before. One of our other segments, I mentioned that one of the inspections we had, and when I asked her what was her experience, she said, I have to tell you that. And then we did a background check on her. She had 1 year as a claim adjuster. But your ideal of was inspecting and testing was to walk over to a dry wall that's been dry for like 9 months and kicked it and said, hey, I don't see a problem with it. these people is what really was hurting people when they prepare these estimates and tell you that this is enough to repair. And that's where the big kick come in. For us as public adjusters, we write out our own estimates, of course, and we detail out every line item that explains what that repair is to be made and how much it is per unit cost, and what's the measurement of how much you need, along with we do depreciation and things of that nature, so we can have a recoverable cost as well as an ACV cost in our estimate. Our estimates are so different because we actually prepare them in a way where a general contractor will come along and give you a one-page paper and tell you it's $90,000, and then
Right.
the insurer to come back and
Well,
go,
that's called a lump sum bid.
a lump sum bid. The insurance, they got three of them. They're arguing back and forth with the insurance company because they don't agree with the fact that I did my due diligence. I went out and got these estimates, and they can't comprehend the fact that we don't believe you. And the reason that they don't believe you, and I explain to my customers, as I've said before, would you pay for a grocery basket that's covered up and just somebody tell you $1,000? The answer is
Right.
no. So, if you tell me what's in the grocery baskets, I'm more likely to accept that than not. And that's the same way with these estimates. So, it's a two-sided sword on that end too, because you get people who overinflate figures in the insurance company, so the checkbook's open to them. And then you get those people that just really don't know how to bid a job out. They just throw numbers up there and they can't justify the numbers. And I think that's one of the reasons that this segment is important, because there's so many things that's left out of estimates because of these natures, in which if they were trying to get their numbers up, if they just knew how to bid it, it wouldn't be any problem.
Let's
And
talk about that one piece that we know and we see every single time that we review estimates. What's the one area that is the most lacking in every single insurance company estimate? We see it every single time. It's either called the main or it's called general conditions. If you're looking at your estimate and you see one line item for a dumpster, the adjuster is not comprehending what that topic is. Main area or general conditions is not just where one dumpster goes in. That's the area that secures the job. That's the area that's for safety. That's the area that you're going to find all the things that make the job work. That's your background, I think. Yes,
hey,
I was tooting my horn. That's very crucial for you to pay attention.
you was
But
on the road. I ain't bothering that.
I was. But here's the thing: every single bit of the general conditions or main area is to secure a proper work site. That is where supervision is located. That is where perhaps fences are located, or you have to have dump trucks or drop off bins, or you have to have masks or helmets or eyeglasses, or you have to have other safety things to make that job site workable. That's just not an assumption that is all just fancy stuff that doesn't have to be estimated. That doesn't get just worked into the overhead. As we have seen in the estimating softwares that we've researched, and that's Xactimate, which is primarily what the insurance companies use, and that's pretty much what most of the industry has gravitated towards as being a line-for-line unit cost estimating software. There's also CoreLogic Symbility, which is also doing the same thing. But an estimate is only a guess unless you have verification of bids.
Absolutely.
But
That's important.
but we know what really takes to secure the job site. Do you ever put in an estimate that doesn't have supervision?
No, not for me. I mean, again, when I was a builder for a couple of decades, there was not one time we didn't have a supervisor on site. We make this argument. I mean, almost 80-90% of the jobs that come through, no matter how large they are, we still seem to have to make this argument on supervision as if it's not required. It amazes me how many of these adjusters don't even have the authority to write a $5,000 check, but they want to tell us that a $500,000 loss is something that's not quite that. I don't think you should do this or can't do that. And you don't have the authority to even write a $5,000 check, let's alone you have any understanding of construction, you have any understanding of pricing, you have no understanding of material, labor, the construction industry. You just sit behind a desk, and all they do when they get that estimate is look at the big numbers only first. That's it. We'll come back to this other stuff. We look at all the big numbers, and those are the ones we say no to right away.
I think that it was really enlightening what you said to me one time when you were talking to that one adjuster that gave you that same kind of, dog and pony act. We don't owe for supervision. Supervision's part of the overhead. And your retort was beautiful. You said, "Aren't you supervised?
Hey,
Do you give your supervisor a bill for how much he supervised you during that week?" The answer is no.
it was an
Supervision is very
unreal question. I mean, the request was so unreasonable is the definitely word. I mean, people, you got to know. This should have been one of those fools of the weeks that we talk about. But you got to know that this adjuster,
Fool of the week.
we're gonna start posting our fools of the week and talk about these different insurance adjusters. We're gonna tell the stories. We won't get a name or their company, so we don't want to, do anything illegal in that end. But some things that people say is just unreal. And they really try to stick by some of this. And sometimes you just gotta shake your head and wonder what's the problem. And quick story of it was this insurance adjuster didn't want to pay. No, I'm sorry, her management did not want to pay for supervision to supervise a job that's six figures, but she came back to say, well, they'll pay for it providing you give us an invoice that your supervisor submitted every week. Okay. Now, how many of us that worked that had a supervisor and we submitted an invoice at the end of the week when we on payroll? So, a little unprofessional. I had to ask her, how stupid is that? Which I shouldn't have said that in the email, but I had to let her know it was really stupid to even say something like that to me. And I had to ask her, if you can't make any decisions, which you can't, and you got to get a manager, how you gonna tell me that they don't need a manager out there? You can't make a
Right.
decision over 5,000. You want them to make a decision over 100,000, but you don't think they need a supervisor because you don't even know why you don't need them. The excuses be the job's not big enough. Where's that in the policy? Where's
Right.
the state in the policy that there's a limit this job has to be before we pay for a charge that we know we owe? You spoke about safety precaution, OSHA costs. We
OSHA
get so
all day
much
long.
pushback on OSHA, like OSHA's just it's just a draw of the game. Hey, throw that in there and see what happens. No, it's a government regulation that's telling you what you have to do for safety. They even fine people for not, complying to the rules, and yet insurance companies come back and say, that's not something that's needed. OSHA's not needed.
Oh, you
Really?
don't need a bathroom on site. You don't need a hand wash station. You don't need a eye wash station. Let me ask you this, Mr. Adjuster, Mrs. Adjuster. Do you have a bathroom? Do you have a hand wash station? If you got something in your eye, could you wash it out? Are these not things that you are required to have as an employee of the insurance company, even if you're at home, even if you're working in an office? These are still requirements to make sure that you can function as an employee during the day. This is no
Absolutely.
different than a job site. And it's even more crucial on a job site because a job site, it exposes workers to injurious behavior of others. It's going to be injurious to life and health on a work site.
Mhm.
You can't
Mhm.
have power tools and electricity and all sorts of falling objects and all sorts of other things that could injure you significantly or kill you and not have supervision and not have OSHA protections. These are not optional. These are not simply things that we bill for. Fortunately, in California, we have the obligations of 2051.5 under the actual cash value requirements, which says that you have to pay all costs to restore a building to pre-loss condition. All
Okay.
costs mean all costs. If you start seeing your estimate with open items, then you got a lazy ass adjuster. I'm going to just put that right
Absolutely.
out there. You have a lazy adjuster, or you have a insurance company that doesn't believe that you need to be paid by the insurance standards, possibly in your state, but definitely not in California. But to leave open items, that is not how we handle our business. And I want to make a big point here. Insurance adjuster just this last week say, all we owe you is the reasonable cost. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for telling me all you owe me is the reasonable cost, because here's the reasonable cost. By statute, you have to pay me everything to restore that to pre-loss condition, guys. That's the reasonable cost, not some sort of subjective, I want to save money, I'm not going to put that in my bill. Oh, that's too damn much. Guess what? You are in the business of risk. If you didn't want to be in the business of risk, you should have been making tricycles. Go off and do something else. But if you're an insurance company, you're in the business of risk, and you owe money when there's a covered peril to restore them to a pre-loss condition. Period. End of story. You're not there to be the hand holder all the way through their claims process. You're supposed to pay them, get out of the way, let those people get back home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. We see this problem too often, and these estimates come back so low that these people can't repair these properties. And give you people an example of just terrible adjusting. We have a client that we took on, and this client had a claim from a windstorm that came off of the ocean, from the Pacific Ocean. And so he lives in a very luxury home. And so it did damages to the seals of some of these windows and doors off his patio. It brought water inside the home. And the insurance company thought, okay, we only owe you a little over, a few $1,000 is all he wanted to say. And, his deductible was higher because it's one of these very expensive homes. And so he ended up with nothing. And so they forced him to have to take this to an attorney. And of course, we were brought on to this case actually to assist with this. And, they've already paid more than six figures, way more. And they owe even way more than that. And the reason I'm making that point is this: they never pay something they don't owe. And since they never pay something they don't owe, you have to think about how do they handle your claim? If we willing to claim we only owe you $3,000, but we pay you a few $100,000, and we still owe you more than that, think about what they would do to you as a customer. From customers that's been given, $20,000, $30,000 to a couple $1 million later.
Right.
Think about what they're doing to you when it's, these estimates that come down, and then you as a customer go out and try to find help, and then they run into every vendor to go, I need at least 100 or 150,000. You got an estimate at hand for $12,000. We see it all the time. And they go, I can't fix my home for this, and then you look at these estimates and you go, okay, so basically who wrote this? A 10-year-old? I mean, somebody sat down here, put a few things on paper, and it makes no sense. And so now we have to come back out there and we have to re-inspect this with this adjuster and walk it. And we have to educate them on something on construction. And here's where it gets crazy, as Corey mentioned. They got to bring an engineer out because they don't know what's going on from the start already. And then we don't, in knowing that the engineers control on what to say and what not to say, the fight gets to be a little more redundant because it's the same hamster on the wheel type thing. But a lot of this reflects from that estimate. The estimate is what causes these problems originally. That's the reason we hear originally, if these people were paid properly, this wouldn't be a problem. But there's so many things that's always missing from these estimates that they need to be more aware of. Like, for example, testing and so forth. Why isn't testing put into more of these estimates to make sure something is done? By assumption, the contractor feel like if we Band-Aid this, then you're good, when you're not really good, because things happen later on down the line if it's not done properly. We see this, and then a contractor's on the line for construction defect or bad,
or they're on the line for having exposed their workers to a hazard that there's no escape clause. I mean, as we have discussed, OSHA has been around since 1979. The general duties clause of OSHA is to protect workers from injury to life and health by doing a pre-loss or a pre-construction inspection to evaluate all hazards of the job site. That includes to test. How do you know what environment you're going to have your workers in unless you test? Absolutely. I don't know where this came from, but I have even heard civil engineers tell me, we don't have to test because this is beyond a certain date of construction. That is the most back-assward understanding of life. And I'm going to say to everyone that has that understanding, please point out to me where in the OSHA standards there is a a pass for anyone that exposes their workers to asbestos or lead. If you expose your workers to asbestos and lead, there is not a questionnaire that contractor is going to get that said, what year was the building you were working on? Oh, if it's after 1983, then you're okay. But you just irradiated your workers with asbestos and lead. Guys, there is no such thing. If you have work being done in your house, you have to know whether or not you're exposing your workers to lead and asbestos. That's just the be all, end all. That's what it is. Because guess what? If you expose your workers, there is a $13,449 daily fine on your ass for not having prepared. And that violation mounts up until you correct the violation. So whoever is saying out there, we don't have to test beyond this date, guess what? I hope that you don't have the miserable task of having to explain to your management how you're being sued for multi-million dollars for having made this decision with just a little bit of urban legend in the back of your head that made some contractor believe that he was okay, and yet you directed that. You don't have a pass by OSHA standards to say there is no lead and asbestos after a certain date. If that were true, why is OSHA still having today in 2022 serious concerns about lead and asbestos coming into the United States and what they're doing to prevent that from being disseminated in all facets of industry? It's here, guys. It didn't go away. It's still here. So in the state of California, lead and asbestos is tested for, and it is part of the claim. And if you find lead and asbestos in your claim in California, it's paid for by statute. So
Got to be abated.
Got to be abated. Got to be tested. Got to be tested. Got to be validated. And even if it wasn't tested or validated, there are still additional regulations on OSHA that protect workers from silica. Silica is originating from tile. It originates from drywall. It originates from concrete. If you are allowing your workers to operate in an area that is not ventilated, that's not regulated for the air, that you're not providing them with safety masks, with eyeglasses, with ear protection, you're exposing yourself to a great big problem. All of that is not just magically, waved away as being part of the contractor's overhead. That is all specific. Yeah, it's specific.
That should be added as protective gear, though. Like you say in the estimate. How many people putting that in there for protective gear? Which they should.
No, they should.
As you mentioned just clearly about the silica, how many times, when there's water leaks in these properties, a dry out mitigation company comes out and they do flood cuts most of the time. Not once did anybody have that mask on, or the fact that they considered that they just sent all those spores airborne.
Mm-hmm.
And now you as a customer keep coming back and forth home. I mean, it's silica is something more serious than most people even pay attention to. In my estimates, it always applies as far as me cleaning is one of the justifications behind painting 101 is why you got to clean the walls before you prime and paint them for debris and everything. And then second, we come back with the fact of silica exposure because the walls were cut. And it wasn't encapsulated at that point. So that means that is exposed. And that usually, so far, that's actually won that argument each time out.
Because it's based upon the law. It's based upon construction guidelines. It's based upon reasonable and necessary costs that are an obligation of a contractor. And you just can't wave your hand and say, well, that's just too damn expensive. We don't want to pay for it. Tough. It's part of the laws. You got to pay for it. So again, open items, one dumpster in your general conditions main area, you got a problem. You'll never get this repaired for that. And also, if you're seeing that there's 5 line items to repair your house, you got another problem, because whoever thought that 5 line items is going to repair any house has never been able to figure out how to read through IKEA instructions to assemble thing, let alone build your house. So there is no such thing. So, guys,
Still funny.
the pitfalls of insurance estimates is that if it looks light, feels light, it is light.
I guess with that said, I'll leave the people a thought for the day, and then we'll wrap up this segment. When it comes to the insurance company, people, if your insurance company hires an expert or hires an individual to fill the seat of an expert, and they spend billions of dollars every year paying these people to keep their costs down so they make a profit, how do you think that's an advantage for you? So if they have somebody representing them, shouldn't you have somebody representing you? You've always been told you never go to court and represent yourself. You never want to go through an insurance claim and represent yourself. If you can, to mitigate some of these problems, this is the reason our podcast is here to help assist with that. But in the interim of everything, I believe everybody should have some form of representation to kind of keep the fields leveled, and somebody who can advocate on your behalf for what is actually damaged and not just what you see. For doing this for over 30 years, I mean, we come out and we see a lot of unforeseen because of experience that you may never get paid for due to the fact that you're just not aware, it's just not your field that you do things in. So my advice to you is that if they come to the field with a hard hitter, you should come to the table with a hard hitter as well. So that way they protect you for your best interest. With that said, that'll help to restore you back to pre-loss condition, and that'll help you to get somewhat of a fair or reasonable settlement many times. And on that note, people, we thank you so much for joining us tonight at Claims Underground. And I'd like to say, signing off tonight, Troy Willis.
Corey Locke, appreciate it. Thanks for all attending.
Thanks for listening to the Claims Underground podcast. We hope you enjoyed this segment. If you need more information on insurance policies, feel free to check out our website, www.claimsunderground.com. And remember, when the insurance companies won't pay, we're here to help. Until next time.